for this one. We're going to be looking at the bans as they come in. INTZ, they're going to hit us with an Ash ban. Gio.
Oh, I'm sorry. Do you want me to cast?
Well, to be honest, you can do, but whilst you think of a point, I've got a great point to make about this because,
Okay.
and I don't want to like dogpile on it, but I was having a good look at all the statistics before this game, and something that I did notice, we were trying to find some players on the side of W7M and INTZ that were inside of these top 10 graphics that producer Simon has lovingly put together. And we were not sort of struggling, but there was a couple of things that we were trying to go with. Now, something that I don't believe producer Simon has got a graphic for, but it is a stat that gets tracked, is headshot percentage. Herds has an 80% headshot percentage, and he mains Ash. Could that be a little bit of a sort of counter?
Well, I could see it being a counter. Absolutely. The thing is with Herds is it's such a coin toss as to whether or not he's going to be switched on. But yeah. I think INTZ have probably recognized that when he is switched on, yeah, he's dangerous. He's not something you want to go up against. And because of how well he performed in that last game that W7M played against Furia, when you compare his performance to that of the rest of the team, you're forcing that average, I suppose, you know, the average rating, the average efficacy of all of those players down by removing the operator that's going to make him perform better. So it's a gamble that's worth taking. And you can tell that INTZ don't feel like it's going to substantially affect them, especially if they're leaning into the idea of picking up a lot of rounds on their defense and not having to rely so much on their attack.
Nomad switched out for the Lion. Where have we seen this before? Oh yeah, it was yesterday when W7M were playing on Coastline and we saw them sort of back and forth between this Lion and Nomad pick. Lion not really working too well for them. Are they going to be able to find that aggression on the entry to be able to make good use of it? Or are we likely going to see Geese switch back onto that good old reliable Nomad and those air jabs? Because Nomad is an operator that is kind of not quite a must bring, but it's a very nice to have bring on the side of Villa because there are so many rotations. There's a lot of distance between the two staircases, and you can make quite a bit of noise as a defender if you're coming up, say, astronomy stairs and looking to try and sort of pressure people that are in trophy and statuary or maybe just outside of games. You can actually make quite a lot of noise in that area, and obviously the Nomad is going to provide that beautiful flank watch for you. Whereas the Lion is a little bit more of an active thing. So keep a close eye on that throughout the course of the round and just see how W7M use it to try and work these roamers.
I was thinking very similarly as well. Just because, you know, the thing with the air jabs is they can come into use later. You don't have to be in that part of the map. Whereas with a Lion, you kind of have to act on that information immediately or it's going to expire pretty quickly. You do get value out of the Lion, even if you don't act on it and get kills off the back of it. It can force the defenders out of their positions, which can certainly provide value to you, but you don't necessarily always know how that is being done. Like this drone from Panico, you can tell that W7M have put in time to set up nice flank drones, which is certainly good for a team like INTZ who've spread themselves quite a lot out of the map. I mean, even VNX we saw position himself down in the basement. He's playing on Pulse, so can provide the information of the whereabouts of any of those players who are within the range of the cardiac sensor. And if W7M want to clear him out, they're going to have to go on quite a big commute to do so before he's actually flushed away.
You've only really got to take a look at the lineup that INTZ are bringing to know that there's going to be barely anybody on the site. You see a Lion scan come out, but arguably late as Kurtz has already fallen. INTZ having the upper hand here. Oh no, getting caught out in the cardiac sensor as Herds' patience is paid off. He gets the trade over onto VNX, but Duds is now looking to make the challenge. The MX4 Storm at close range absolutely shreds, and he's able to win that engagement out without too much of a worry. Another Lion scan coming out, but again, it feels as though these scans are coming in a little bit late. Duds takes down Guy Panico with the trade. Hornetau getting the trade back. Very good game here from INTZ in terms of how quickly they're able to respond to these kills. And the position that it's left them in is a 3-man advantage as they go into this final 30 or so seconds. Padron with the smoke, pre-fires his way in. The Toxic Babe literally hits him, and Drunks comes round with the final frag. Very convincing round there from INTZ. W7M struggling to deal with that roam game.
INTZ didn't even have to worry at all at the end because they knew that all of the attack had come from the north side. They could have a player present in study because there was absolutely no pressure at any point onto either the main stairs or the veranda, anywhere near study. What that meant is when Panico actually threw in those smokes at the end, you could tell that he was concerned about angles that could be held in from games or even vault, where you would naturally expect there to be a defender. But at no point did he seem to worry too much about the study door after he spent a second or so just holding onto that angle. When he actually turned around to try and clear the ADS, he could just get shot straight in the back. It wasn't particularly hard for INTZ to do that. And you're right, Ollie. A lot of the roam game was a lot of work for W7M to deal with. And even though those players on the roam eventually got taken down, it took a lot of investment from W7M. Now, I'm really interested because we're about to see the Twitch poll, and I want to know what everyone is thinking. 66% to INTZ, 34% to W7M Gaming. How much, Ollie, do you think that the confidence in INTZ has been influenced by their last couple of playdays?
It has to be. If you put all the polls out at the start of, week 2, let's say, when we saw a little bit of the teams but not a great deal, I don't think the INTZ would have that sort of a percentage here. But having said that, they do seem to do quite well in these polls, as I believe they've got quite a lot of loyal fans out there in the chat that really do cheer for them. And that's got to feel very good as a team, knowing that you've got people that cheer for you when you're not performing, and then people that stick around and continue to cheer for you when you manage to make some changes. So for INTZ, it is the dream position for these guys to be in. They've got the fans, and now they are coming out here with the results, and the faith is still within them, in the people.
Now, it's important to remember, of course, that neither of these teams can qualify for the Cobra Elite 6 at this point, but it is really about setting those expectations and carrying your own momentum through to the next stage. The improvements that both of these teams have seen are really got to be proven in this game. Herds is going to push on forward, but in fact, it'll be Duds to get the first kill. Drunks adding on to the kill count for INTZ as well.
We're yet to see a significant engagement be won by W7M in this second round, and I guess in the game as a whole. Once again, they've lost the opening 2. Kurt's falling very early on. Panico is kind of giving the game away here at this main door and is going to be forced to try and back on off. All the pressure at the moment from W7M in trying to clear out that floor, but the site is going to be trophy and statuary. They're worrying about something that isn't even worth worrying about at this point, but they're left chasing shadows. As we can see from the outline view, that a lot of the players for the side of INTZ have already rotated themselves upstairs, and they're now working in and around the site.
You can tell that W7M are trying to do their due diligence while, by doing a really deep clear all the way from the other side of the map. It's not the first round in this game where they've looked to do that, but it's wasting so much time, and they're still not sending anyone to pressure the side of the map where the site actually is. That's what put them in a position in that last round where INTZ had complete free roam in their defense at the end to take whatever angles they wanted onto Padron. They're going to find themselves in a really similar position if they keep this up. Even if you want to have a clear from the other side of the map, it's always a good idea to have players pressuring onto the site itself, or at the very least the side of the map where the site is. It gives the defenders more to worry about. You can apply more onto the defensive utility that is actually present in the site. You have a much stronger chance of being able to secure trades or pinches.
They're going to get himself into an engagement. Drunks, impatient as ever, is going to find the kill. Couple trade back and forward, but Padron once again left in a 1vx. This time a 1 versus 4. Toxic Babe canisters get thrown on out. Vitz has the intel, and he's going to swing for that final kill. W7M, they've found 3 kills inside of 2 rounds here, and both times we've come down to the wire in terms of time. Villa is really punishing them here tonight on the attack.
I really want to be able to talk about all this deep strategy that INTZ are showing, but INTZ haven't really had to do much for a lot of the games. I mean, they're setting up the defensive setups. I mean, fine, great, like, that's awesome, but then they just kind of have to sit there for a bit because, well, A, it takes ages for W7M to actually reach them, B, there's just simply no pressure on them. Duds and Drunks getting caught in a lot of those opening engagements, but they're getting caught in the favorable sides. I don't know how much of that is because they simply know that they're just better than W7M, but I suspect it doesn't come down to anything nearly that simple. A lot of it will be because W7M are telegraphing their positions, and INTZ have a much stronger idea of where those players are to get the kills than W7M do on them. When W7M do open up those windows because they know that there's a defender nearby, they're still taking a gamble because, well, they might be able to hear the defender, for example. They don't have a super solid idea of where they are. Whereas W7M, because they play windows so frequently in this same way, INTZ can probably read into that significantly easier than W7M can in return.
Round number 3. Yet to see the attackers have any sort of early success here, let alone an opening kill. INTZ are really running them a merry dance. Now, they've gone for kind of a tertiary site here, as they're actually inside of library. Now, typically we would expect kitchen to be brought out as the third site, but here in Brazil we have seen teams quite like this library objective. Now, what they'll often do is bring a mirror. Now, obviously, mirror not being available inside of this round. Being available but not being brought. Often we will see teams bring mirror, as you can use that to get some nice long lines of sight, particularly onto the bottom of astronomy stairs, and then still continue to hold upstairs. You need to hold aviator games room because that's obviously above the site and where a lot of the vertical angles can be used, which is very valuable from both sides to have control of. Ooh, heads! He's going to grab one of those headshots that we know him for as he takes down Duds in a nice little swing there onto that main stair. It finds an opening kill for W7M, and it removes a player out of that all-important main stair area.
It's a really nice kill as well, because you could tell that Duds knew to look onto the study window. Out goes a C4 from Hornetow, but that's just waiting there for now. You mentioned long lines of sight, Ollie, and that's something that INTZ have actually opened up onto the site above, or those rooms above. They haven't fully reinforced off the study wall. Instead, they want to be able to hold on those lines of sight, but they can be used back in retaliation, and that's exactly what Kurtz does. No, Vitz!
Oh, no.
That's not the guy to shoot. This doesn't look like it's going in INTZ's way.
It's an unfortunate one there for Vitz. SMG-11 headshot onto a teammate. This could be a bridge too far for INTZ. VNX is going to be upstairs, so these defenders very split here in the moment. Takes the advantage and takes down Kurtz. Kurtz just trying to gather a bit of info last minute on his drone, as he was only one shot and an engagement would have been quite tricky for him. Guy could find a nice rotation kill here, as he knows that's where VNX is going to be coming from. Pops the air jab out for good measure, but I'll guess that we're not going to need it, as Hertz swings on into the site. Vitz all alone. Hertz picking up yet another kill. We got the first kill, we got the last kill inside of that round.
I actually wanted to talk about the attacking lineup that W7M did bring, because it was way more prepared to deal with the information they needed and the control of the defenders and the flanks, because they had the Jackal, they had the Nomad, they also had a Yana as well. So they were really investing in trying to get as much information and control of them as possible. Now, I actually don't think that it was the attacking lineup that won that round for W7M. I just think it was notable that they made that change. Really, what happened, I mean, Hud's getting that opening kill, definitely valuable, definitely useful. It meant that W7M could gain the control of the main stairs, which is incredibly useful for any instance under which you want to be controlling games or aviator. In this case, obviously that wasn't the site itself, but it is a place that you need to gain control of so you can hold the vertical angles down below. So doing that as swift as they did, great. That's a first tick achieved. But also we started to see the limitations and the risks of having a defensive setup in the way that INTZ had. I spoke about how they opened up a lot of the soft walls. They'd opened up the walls between Aviator and Games, which admittedly is quite popular to see on an AVG hold as well. They'd also had had a soft wall on the study wall so they could look directly into study in the study door, and they had the rotation in what you might refer to as the main stairs rotation, which is the closest panel of bar to the main stairs. It's great when you're the defender and you have an advantage up there and you can hold those angles, but once Duds went down, there was only one guy up there at that point, and W7M had kind of the room to surround that and use those lines of sight to their own advantage, which they did.
Unsurprisingly here, we're seeing INTZ try and mix things up. As they take us down to Kitchen, the more predictable third choice site here on Villa. Gives W7M something else to think about now. They showed good success early on. Herds, he's on a little bit of a tear. He's going to peek with the nade. Still goes for the nade toss and then the swing to back that up. This guy's had 4 kills inside of the last 2 rounds already, and we were only just getting started inside of round number 4. Vitz, he has a look, but just takes a chunk of damage instead. W7M is stepping up their game here on the attack, really giving INTZ something to worry about. For the second time now, INTZ are going to be fighting from a couple of man behind. Very quickly, W7M have turned the tables in their favour. The job isn't over, though, because the site is downstairs. There's a lot of work that you need to do inside of Trophy and Statuary. And by work, I mean getting open that floor. Get open the floor, get those lines of sight, and be able to pinch and pressure these defenders.
The really interesting thing for me so far is the fact that the 2 rounds where W7M have had the better openers have been onto sites where the vertical play is basically required, where you have to defend the upstairs and the downstairs at the same time, and those aren't necessarily seen as roams, more so as kind of static off-site plays. It means that the defenders in those instances don't have as much freedom to move around as much as they want, because you can't simply decide to give up that space because it gives the attackers too much of an advantage. It's in those examples when W7M can actually aggress onto INTZ and take the space brutally, and thus the lives of those players. Meanwhile, when you look at the AVG and the statuary holds, INTZ's roams can move as much as INTZ want. If they decide to relinquish control of the other side of the map, that's fine by them. And look, it's just still going. Padron adding on to the kill count.
Taking down VNX there inside of Closet, leaving Vitz and Hornetal this time in a pretty sticky spot. INTZ is still yet to find a kill here. Drones coming out are going to give the game away. Hornetal with a swing over onto Padron. He's got the diffuser there and he knows it. He's instantly going to drop the hatch and try and play this angle. He's got a couple of angles to watch. The shotgun doesn't win out at that close range. Diffuser recovered. 3 seconds left and Herds is going to try and make that one stick. Vitz has a chance here. He has a C4. He's going to throw it out. Doesn't manage to catch the planter. Instead, catches Guy. Gets a second kill onto Panico and can take a moment. He can reload his primary and look to try and challenge on now, as this was a 1 versus 3, and very quickly he's locked it into a 1v1. Herds isn't in the best location. He's actually led down prone directly on the plant. Vitz going for the swing, doesn't have the intel. Herds just holding that angle there. A close round for W7M.
I like the way that W7M flooded down onto Hornetown. I think that was the point where you knew they were going to at least get the plant down. And despite the fact that Vitz brought it to a 1v1, as you mentioned, didn't have the intel, and Herds won that one out. I think that the hypothesis I was kind of presenting in the middle of that round still stands. It's when INTZ don't have the freedom to move their defenders as they wish, is when W7M can push onto them much better. When we look at their AVG defense, INTZ have their roamers who are up on the north side of the site, and when W7M push in from the north side, INTZ can recall those roamers as they want, because the site's all the way on the other side of the map. You don't require control over statuary or trophy in order to win an attack onto AVG. So it doesn't matter if INTZ relinquish that control. In fact, it's almost tactical because you're simply wasting time. That doesn't stand for when you're attacking onto library or attacking onto kitchen, because defenders giving up the space above those sites automatically puts the attackers in a favorable position, because that control is required to attack successfully onto it. That's where INTZ seem to have had their issues so far, is when their defenders are more in that static off-site position. I'm very interested to see if that does continue. However, because there are only 2 more rounds left of this half, it's likely we'll only see AVG and Trophy Statuary be played by INTZ.
We asked for a bit more conviction from W7M on their attacks, and so far they are giving it to us. Now this is going to be a little bit of a tester for them, because so far they've struggled on the sites that are on this first floor. They've been much more successful, should I say, on the sites that are on the ground level. But INTZ are going to be trying to hold quite fast. Kurtz could get himself caught out here. Where's the player that's coming up? Astro, there it is. It's going to be Duds. Finds the nice kill there. There's a good bit of teamwork from INTZ on the roam. Gets them the first opening kill for quite some time, it feels like. W7M left to just falter a moment. They've lost some grenades there. They've also lost Sledge's hammer. They will have backup grenades in the hands of Herds, but no soft destruction. Not that it's really going to be required here. So obviously with the Ash being banned, it's not necessary to bring both the Iana and the Sledge normally, but when Ash is banned, you do tend to see players getting that Iana and picking it up. Or there's a fear, someone that we've not seen W7M opt to play just as of yet. Herd's giving the game away there as he pre-fires the alibi on the east stairs. Proximity alarms hitting off as well. There's a bit of a rotate coming out.
Like as well that because of that alibi hit, Hornetown knows where to be looking out of the aviator door as well. Has better expectations for this push being put upon INTZ by W7M. It seems like a really small bit of information that the defenders receive, but it could make all the difference when you know whether to look right compared to left. Still, W7M have 4 players remaining and a minute to play with. They're all together for the most part other than Padron, and they're taking some time to drone as well.
INTZ are fairly well set up for this. They've got a good handle of study. For the time being, it seems, though, we see silhouettes getting there onto that study balcony. That's going to be Padron. He's going to be trying to pressure onto the player inside of there, which is going to be Drunks. VNX is assisting from the main stairs. Not sure if anyone knows where Drunks is. Xcaro's going to get placed out onto the wall and probably going to get shot off at the moment, but Drunks has actually found himself down. VNX trying to bait him out there a little bit. Hornetal grabbing a quick kill as a trade, and a second before falling to Padron. Kills coming in quick and fast, and it's all going to come down to Padron, as he is taken down as the final player alive for W7M inside of that study area. Just trying to pressure in, not really left with much of an option. Had to take that engagement onto VNX.
I do like that W7M decided to send Padron around onto the study balcony, specifically to try and open up the wall. The problem is they hadn't done anything prior to that that would ensure his safety or even the likelihood of him scoring his objective. As you noted, when you shoot the Hibana pellet onto a wall, if someone from the enemy team can see that, they can shoot them off. You don't need to have denial on the wall to actually get rid of a Hibana pellet. So straight away, players in study can shoot them off. Padron's not going to push on forward. But crucially, W7M hadn't taken control of main stairs. It meant that VNX could continue to play there, and despite the fact that Drunks went down in study, he still held that power position. That entirely prevents Padron from pushing forward. It means that he can't move forward or really do anything, even if he did open up that breach onto, or into Aviator, I should say. The position that VNX was in would have allowed him to punish Padron immediately. Maybe if he hadn't have been on his own, it would have been a bit different. Maybe if W7M had put a player onto the study window at the same time to hold an angle onto the top of main stairs and subdue or even kill VNX, could have spelled a different story. But the fact is they didn't do that. So while the adaptation to send someone down south was in good faith, it wasn't enough to actually achieve much.
Final round for defense in regulation for INTZ here. And this is ultimately going to decide whether they end on a 4-2 or a 3-3 split. Now, we spoke earlier about how W7M struggled attacking onto these first floor sites and rang true the second time on Aviator and Games Room. Obviously, this time, Trophy and Statuary is the chosen objective by INTZ. I'm sure that they're going to try and pick this one up as well. W7M are going for a bit of a master bedroom stack up at the moment, as there's 3 players in and around the area. Herds has actually already got himself in. Drone's working ahead of him. He's going to get very aggressive onto this. We've not seen a great deal of play here, only 50 seconds or so, and he's already challenging the doorway that leads into Statuary. If he gets a sniff of an opportunity, he might just take it. Pre-fires are going to be exchanged, and Vitz gets chunked down a little bit, but not too much to worry about. He finds the kill there over onto Duds. A challenge comes in from Statuary door, and that could be all the opening here that W7M need.
Drone looking directly onto the Kaid of Vitz. In the meantime, VNX gets a C4 kill onto Guy. Ooh, a nice nade as well onto Vitz. That drone just providing the perfect information W7M needed to know of his whereabouts. Now Drunks has got to try and watch out for that area in Astro as well as Trophy too.
Pressure now going to come into Astronomy as a nade gets tossed on out, and there's plenty of drones at Hornetau's feet. Obviously, one of the downsides of the SMG-11 is the small mag size. You take down a couple of drones, and then you can't take your engagement. Luckily for him, engagement isn't going to come just yet. Padron is still inside of this bathroom. Herds still holding on to that statuary door as Toxic Babe canisters, I believe, get tossed on out from Hornetau. Kurt's going for a rotation here. Maybe going to try and come up Astro. Panico as well is making his way toward main stairs area. So with not a great deal of time remaining, all of a sudden W7M have scattered and they've gone, we need to be pressuring this from other angles. Which I kind of like. I agree with that. You do need to have something else to your push other than just a brute force through study door. But is it going to pay for them? Herds gets himself taken down. Hornetau lying in wait. And he also has the assistance of Drunks here if a push does come. Well, a push will come. Hornetau finds himself too. He had some beautiful crossfires there with his team as everyone was pulling in that direction. Panico now got to try and frag out. He finds one, gets shut down by VNX. A 4-2 split secured here on Villa for INTZ.
And for all the droning that W7M did of Astro, they decided to walk straight in when Hornetau was ready to punish them. Now, of course, there is the chance that he had removed those drones by the time they made that decision, and that's something that we don't definitively have the answer to. But even then, they hadn't gotten rid of the shield that was present in there. The rotate is obviously going into Trophy, which means anybody who was playing in Trophy could simply move in through the rotate and sit behind the shield. The point is that you did nothing to flush out the defenders from within there. Yes, you got the nade onto Vitz a little bit earlier on, but you knew full well that you hadn't killed every single defender or made Astro completely yours. It was reclaimable by INTZ. And they did reclaim it. Now, I can understand that W7M maybe felt the pressure because time was seriously waning at that point. They were down to maybe the last 10-15 seconds. They had to make some push in. But to have really left that key utility up in a place that would have allowed a defender to just sit there waiting for you to come in through the Astro window, it's inexcusable.
4-2 splits then for INTZ, as while W7M looked exceptionally good in a couple of rounds, they kind of just let themselves down in others. Now they switch over onto the defense. We'll have to see how INTZ choose to approach this. Of course, Ash being one of the bans that we saw today, just sort of open things up somewhat for these attackers. Thatcher, a staple ban, pretty much inside of competitive Siege, so I don't expect any Thatcher, but you can at least expect any one of the hard breaches, Maverick, Ace, or of course Hibana. Thermite never really sees a ban, does see some play. just opens the game up for the side of the attackers. INTZ are going to choose to bring the Zephyr, which is something that we didn't see W7M doing a great deal of.
Well, you know what that means? It means that shields be removed. I mean,
It does.
W7M did bring nades. They just didn't use it to remove the shield.
They didn't bring nades. They didn't do a great job at removing shields. But what they have done is they've doubled down on projectile catchers. They've got an ADS, and they've got a Jaeger who brings the ADS, and they've got a WAMI who brings the magnets.
Well, we saw VNX play WAMI on a couple of rounds. And they're not the only ones to have done it, admittedly.
But it still sort of gives a little bit more value to those shields, and you have an idea that they're going to be a bit more secure. I'm laughing. I've lost full. I've just seen a frost mat behind that shield, and all I can think of is that it's going to catch somebody.
I want the vault. Yeah, please, come on. This is the point at which you wish that you could communicate with the observer, but obviously we've got one of our Brazilian observers doing it, so we can't directly speak to her. I just want her to know telepathically. And look, there's another one right behind the study window too.
Someone's getting caught in a frost mat this round, make no mistake of it. Especially with the way that the kills are coming in, it could lead to a little bit of haste on the side of INTZ, as they've already found themselves two. Guy and Panico have both been taken down. Herds is looking maybe for a bit of a rotation. Padron inside of Vault. The remaining players on the side of W7M looking to try and lock it down a little bit. I kind of like the angle Herds is holding there. He's outside of the door. He's at the top of East Stairs. Now, he's susceptible to be challenged from 90. We do have drunks in that vicinity, though he is going to be going more toward that main stair area. Duds is going to open up onto site. We could see an aggressive swing here from Kurtz. Herds has actually got himself back on inside. He's got the shield to play around, though, and can play either side of that quite nicely indeed. Another kill coming in for INTZ. It's shaping up to be a flawless round, but Padron has something to say. He takes down Drunks from the vault with the rarely seen TCSG now, while Herds finds a second over onto Vitz. So regardless of the fact there's 20 seconds left, ooh, not just quite. Duds finds Padron. And Herds is now left in the 1 versus 2. VNX down. Could have a chance at picking another up here. Yes, essentially 1 versus 1. Not enough time to revive VNX. Hornital's going to have to take this as an out-and-out engagement. Gets caught in a sprint animation. Oh, the Frostmat did come in. I wasn't sure how VNX got downed there, but it was the Frostmat inside of Study. What a great clutch there coming out from Herds.
Oh, finally. We got what we wanted. Maybe not quite how we wanted it, but we did get what we wanted. A great round for Herds, and I think a lot of the sting there for INTZ is going to come from the fact that they didn't do any kind of a north side clear, really focused on what was going on in that southern side, which usually is fine, but what it meant is that they didn't make much of an attempt to take 90 control. It's something that actually we haven't seen a ton of in the Brazilian region, and I get the immediate region where I think about it, and having seen it, is in NA, but it does happen in EU as well, and that is having an upside down rappel on the 90 window, for example. There isn't usually a ton of attention paid to that window here in this region, and when you leave 90 just free roam for the defenders, that gives someone like Herds all that space to work with around the, which you can use to rotate around the site. Because when you're at the top of red, you have direct eyes into Study and into Aviator. You can walk all the way around and have control of Study, top main, and bar as well. So a really powerful place to have, and I think INTZ not taking the effort to take that from W7M is ultimately what gave Herds what he needed to win all those gunfights.
It just comes down, to the classic one-dimensional push. And that's exactly what we saw from INTZ. It was a heavy stack up inside of Study, and there wasn't really anything else going for it. We had a rappel in through the 90 window, but it was very short-lived. And as you say, there was just a distinct lack of pressure and arguably information. You know, not knowing that there was a frost mat underneath that Study window is kind of unforgivable stuff. With the addition of Z-Ping, it's a comment we've made quite a lot about a number of teams. We saw W7M doing it quite a lot, in fact, in this game, making sure that all the utility is being pinged out so that everybody knows where it is. But it's something we see a lot of teams now doing, and you've really not got much of an excuse to add that into your drone phase. Just be spamming Z while you're looking around at utility.
W7M will be moving on to Trophy and Statuary for their next defensive round, and they've started off their defensive half pretty well, putting themselves at just a 1-round deficit behind INTZ. Maybe have the opportunity to catch up with them in this round. INTZ, much like W7M, have decided to lean into that Lion pick. Herds is going to be watching onto the Wolf window, where he knows Vitz is playing just outside. It's going to force Vitz to rotate and instead go in through Mudroom, it would appear. INTZ are going to take a slightly different approach.
Wall into Statuary already being open as well. That's not bad going, really. It certainly removes a lot of the defender ability to play inside of Statuary, and you can see it's forced a couple of the defenders over into the Trophy side. Utility now getting burned inside of Showers, as there's no one in Astronomy. What is going on here? A Lion Scan's going to root Kurtz in place. We're left with defenders trying to scramble and get back onto the site as Hornetow goes huge, finding himself too. Padrin, he takes down Vitz, who was trying to make that rotation on up. VNX is flashing the diffuser and tempted to get it down, and he will start to continue that. There's potential for a C4 from below, but with Herds off-site, trying to fight his way up Astro, he's not going to be able to have a direct effect onto that plant, and therefore it will go down without a hitch. Guy looks to aggressively push on in. Hornetow continues his tear. There's potential for an ace here, and it'd be a massive clutch if he gets it. Padrin shuts him down, however, as he just had too many angles to watch in that moment. It's still a 2 versus 2, and there's 20 seconds left on this diffuser. Time enough for W7M to do something, but they have to move quickly. VNX cuts down Herds, and it's now all left down to Padrin. A second swing from VNX, and INTZ secure that round number 8.
Honestly, at this point, I think that Hornetow is just the king of Astro, because when INTZ were defending, it was Hornetow and Astro that won the round for them, and then this time INTZ are on the attack, and his just waltz into Astro unimpeded is exactly what gave INTZ the room that they needed. As you said, why is no one there? Why is no one defending that part of the map? Astro isn't one of the bomb sites, no. But what it does give is completely free reign to walk into one of the bomb sites. You can come in at the defenders from angles that they're maybe not expecting. You can just jump in through the Astro window, or maybe the stairs if you're feeling a little bit cheeky. Either way, you're gonna get kills off the back of it, and Hornetown did. And what we saw directly after him getting kills in Astro was him taking just refuge in Trophy behind a little cabinet thing, and he could just swing straight out. He got another kill, a headshot in fact, off of the back of that position. Really difficult position for W7M to be in, and they had to bring in defenders from either side of Trophy to actually flush him out. One coming in through Wolf, one coming up the Astro stairs, which was Herds. At that point, you shouldn't have to be donating 2 of your players to deal with a guy who had free reign to walk into your bomb site. That's not the way that it should have to work on a defense. And even though it did come down to a 2 versus 2, BNX was well positioned right next to the diffuser to just swing on out onto those players that were aggressing onto him. Not the best performance from W7M, I don't think, on that defense, and certainly an oversight from them that they won't be in any rush to repeat.
One of the things that really stood out to me was the use of the Lion Scan in that round, because it was so proactive. You could almost hear Hornetow screaming for Vitz to hit that scan, because it was going to result in kills for him, because it was going to root those defenders into place. And we've just seen a scan come out there. Now, we didn't get the whole picture because we were flitting around on different points of view, but that could have been another instance. The Lion scan coming out before the attempt at the kill, not after, not when you've been taken out by a roamer and you're trying to get that roamer to stop moving so you can catch up. Hornetau's using this in a much different fashion. He's using it proactively to gain him kills, and it's working. A nice early one there onto Padrin. Padrin's someone that's been stepping up over the course of this play day. Vitz picks a second up onto Panico. Maybe the way that the sights has been going for both of these teams is going to continue, as we're seeing Kitchen, it looking like it's going to favour the attackers.
Really good use of that utility from INTZ, absolutely. And the way you have to praise the level of communication that is required between all of these players in order to actually have that pay off. To know when the E1D is going to come out, what you're going to do when it does come out, how everybody is positioned to capitalize on it, and what your next moves are going to be. That all has to be decided in a really short space of time. Here's the next one that's coming in as Vitz jumps in through the wolf window. And you can see that Twitch drone just droning out into laundry to catch any of those defenders in there.
Another Lion scan there as Duds is going to look to push his way on in. Kurtz was rooted beautifully there. He's able to be taken out nice and easy here by INTZ. 40 seconds left is plenty of time for them to work with as Vitz, he picks up Herds on that rotation. It's all down to Guy. He finds one, finds two, but Drunk's in with the trade. It was always going to happen in a 1 versus 5, and INTZ are really starting to chain them together here. They were getting the diffuser down as well in those dying few seconds. They could be shaping up here for yet another win in a strong start, or a strong end, should I say, to their stage.
You can, of course, talk about the weaknesses of W7M's defenses, but I think when you look at the last few games that INTZ have played and where they've performed well, there has been a surprisingly large number of rounds that they've done well on that have specifically been on their attack. One of the things we talk about quite a lot is that struggling teams typically do better on defense because it requires less intricate coordination between the players. INTZ were a struggling team for a very long time, and in the last few play days, they've really flipped around from that. And it seems that their attacks are very well coordinated, just as many of their defenses are. They're not particularly struggling on any one half when they play their games. And even when we look at the game they played against NIP just yesterday, it was the same kind of thing. INTZ took 3 defensive rounds on the first half against NIP. But when we look over to their attacking half, they took 4 attacking rounds out of 5. They didn't even need all 6 rounds. So it's just something that INTZ seem to be pretty good at doing. And I would say that that's a great advantage to them moving forward. As they've made these role switches, as they've found their flow, to have a strong attack as well as defense is really going to set you up for greatness.
Yeah, I think that the role changes have shown more on the attack than they have on the defense, I feel anyway.
Yeah.
And it's mainly due to like harsher role swaps, I guess, between VNX and sort of Duds and Drunks, kind of all really mixing it around a little bit. But it just seems to be giving them so much more out of their attacks than it is in the defenses. Because the defenses were okay, they were just struggling with that sort of teamwork. And obviously, if you're not doing well in your attacks, it then becomes difficult to perform well on your defensive round. I think we are potentially going to see a quick rehost here, as I do believe we had a player on the side of INTZ drop out. It's tense time for a rehost. It was match point there for INTZ. I guess it does give W7M a little bit of time to breathe. And let's be honest, they kind of do need it at this point because they are down pretty bad. 6 rounds to 3, I believe, is the score that currently sits. And W7M yet to find any sort of success here on the defense.
Yeah, I mean, they won on round number 7. And that was, you know, going back to what I was saying about taking no real control of 90, and Hertz had a lot of space to work with right at the end when INTZ were trying to push in from one real direction. But other than that, no, W7M haven't looked particularly strong on the defensive side whatsoever, really. And this is back on that same site as well. That said, you know, despite the fact that W7M did win that round back in round number 7, I think that it was a small enough mistake on the side of INTZ that they should be able to deal with that going into this next round. I don't really foresee this next round going in W7M's favor. And it's, you know, we've spoken about it with a number of teams, but it's nothing to do with their individual play, really. It's more about how they combine that. Because, you know, Hertz has had an okay game, right? Like, he's been doing all right. It's not that these players who have historically struggled are doing terribly. It's about combining it into something that works. It was actually a criticism that I had of Team 1 back in the sort of first half of the stage, was that Team 1 were very clearly really, you know, great as individuals, but putting it into something that's actually coordinated and works as a strategy and being greater than the sum of your parts was something they needed some time to build up. And I think that's the case with W7M at the very least here on this half of this game.
Yeah, they're seeing a bit more success on the attack, which is a bit unusual to say, I guess. And it's kind of testament to the work that they're putting in, because that really showing through, and it did show through there. The mistakes and the INTZ were making, they weren't necessarily mistakes that just gift rounds to your opponents. W7M were really there to capitalize on that. And I think it's nice looking from sort of INTZ's perspective on just how they're able to sort of chain these performances together now, because I think there was a bit of a worry between everyone that they could have just been a bit of a flash in the pan against FaZe and it was maybe a bit of a one-hit wonder. But they've started to chain these results together and they're playing in a very consistent way. And it's working very well for them. I really like how Hornetow's stepped up to the plate and is filling the role that was kind of lacking before on the side of INTZ. That sort of nice balance between not quite an entry fragger, but still playing in that flexible, aggressive role and still often finding entry kills.
Well, this was the whole conversation surrounding Hornetown when we came into this stage, right? Was Alamau got taken out of this roster and he was their bedrock. He was the epicenter of this team. And how much was it going to affect the roster without him being there? We knew that Hornetown was a good player. He'd come from Black Dragons, but how long was it going to take him to synergize with them? How long would it take for things to, you know, get to where they wanted to be? Was it a long-term investment, or was it something that was going to start manifesting in the short term? And I would say that, you know, it was maybe a few play days ago that we actually started to see that go from, oh, this is the new guy who's trying to fill someone else's shoes, to this is a guy who's actually starting to bring the glue and the adhesive of this team all together.
Yeah, I'd agree. He's sort of stepping into that role there that Alamau has left behind, and you can even see it in the sort of operators that he's playing. He's playing a lot of Book. You know, we know how good Alamau is on the Book, and it's nice to see that sort of synergy coming back together. I have got the audio in my ears. I know now that the game has once started again. Thank you so much for bearing with us during that short little break. Hopefully, the players are all ready to go, and we're going to see no more disconnections. I think maybe a PC crash or something for one of the guys on the side of INTZ. And at match point, you don't want to risk that sort of stuff, Gio. Hit the quick rehost. Use the pause function that we have in the game, although I don't think that actually got used. I think the lobby got made entirely from scratch. We are back here for this potential last round here for INTZ, as they sit at 6 rounds to 3.
So they are, of course, on match point, and despite the fact that that little pause we had was a rehost because of some kind of maybe internet or computer issue, what that will have given to W7M is almost a tactical timeout. They have some time to discuss amongst themselves what they're going to do. And the same thing does go for INTZ, but it's W7M really who need it more right now because they are lagging behind in terms of the points that they have. So I'm interested to see how this is going to go. Interestingly, they've decided to bring along they've decided to bring along Clash, which is something that we saw them play a decent amount against FaZe Clan. Except when they did that against FaZe Clan, it was Padron who was playing Clash, while Panico was out fragging out of his mind.
Yeah, and there was a comment, I think, that we heard made in that sort of post-game that there was sort of a feeling that the Clash was kind of a bit of a desperate attempt from W7M at trying to just gain a little bit more strength and power on the defense. And whilst Clash is great, it's very specific and very situational. And I think about Aviator Games Room, and I think unless you're playing very carefully, you can quite easily be caught out and crossfired as a Clash, because you've only got the shield facing the front. You know, you've got it on the back when you throw it on your back, but there's so many crossfires that can be gained here. Now, I guess the only advantage there in that is that we saw a very flat push last time from INTZ. It was all from the study side. Now, in direct contrast, they have decided to go for more of a north side push coming in from this master bedroom area. But once again, it is fairly one-dimensional. I would expect a player to get out and rotate toward study as soon as possible, as soon as whatever job that they are waiting to complete has been achieved.
It's taking their time, and they're just trying to burn some of this utility to get rid of the shield. Hertz has also activated his gadget, just in case they throw out any smokes, perhaps. Panico going to be thrust upon, but it's Duds to get the first kill onto Hertz. That is that Warden who was playing in Aviator. So immediately that route in that was being guarded by him has now been let go.
You can see Vitz is making a rotation now, coming in onto that study balcony. It's going to do something to give W7M another thing to think about. A Lion Scan not going to be enough to concern Panico, as he more than happy to move around, as of course he is the Clash. Having the shield and that extra level of security affords you a few more options. You're going to be holding fast onto the study door. Hornetal finds a great kill over onto Gee. So for all that the Clash is doing to actually slow INTZ down, which it is slowing their progress into the site, INTZ is still able to find these nice little kills coming in, and they're just dipping in and out as required, and Clash can't be in all places at once. Pressure now coming into the site as we've actually got a player inside of games. Duds is going to push on through in there as the plant is being stuck. VNX looking to get it down under the cover of smoke. Panico, you've got to go for the swing. Hits it at the right time, just before that plant was locked on in. This is now very messy here on the side of INTZ as the Clash, for all it didn't do too much in the early round, it did a lot there on the site.
Yeah, the thing that I was mostly thinking about the Clash throughout the course of that round was how her role changed progressively. So when there were 5 players alive, she was out off the site, guarding a lot of that 90 corridor area. And then there were players being picked off from W7M, and the Clash would progressively get closer and closer to the site until she was actually deep within it, because that space had been taken by INTZ, and you needed to protect the players who were still in the site, and, you know, for a plant as well. It was at that point, you know, when Panico on the Clash had been brought back deep into the site and INTZ wanted to push in, still they hadn't dealt with the Clash itself. And while they'd taken space around the site, there was still a problem within it. You don't have a ton of time at that point. And so there were smokes coming out, you know, on either side, particularly those toxic bait canisters, which act as a huge plant denial. A Clash is trying to electrify you while standing right there. You're quite limited in your options for how you're going to cover that plant as well. So despite the fact that INTZ looked pretty good for the first half of that round, because of those, you know, mid-game adaptations in positioning that Panico was making, that actually almost saved the game for W7M. It saved the round. Not the entire game. We're not there yet.
I mean, it saved the game for a time because it was match point to INTZ, and it is still match point here to INTZ. So every round that W7M get one closer to taking INTZ to an overtime here. They can't afford to lose one more round here. Going to be looking, of course, at a different site now. Trophy and Statuary is going to be the selected location. Somewhere that we saw such a nice push from Hornetal back a couple of rounds ago. But there was the nice little addition of the Lion. Now, Lion has instead been dropped, and Vitz has picked the Dokkaebi up. Both fulfill similar roles in that sort of disruption, utility, and gadgetry that they possess. But obviously, the Logic Bomb phone calls here, arguably a little bit more invasive than the Lion scan, as it is just going to be a sound cue. You can wait for it to pass. To see how it is going to be used here, because previously Hornetau, it seems, has been quite vocal in calling for that utility, that Lion scan to be done, and then he'll get himself a nice kill off the back of it, obviously with some drone work done prior. You can't really do the same with that Dokkaebi phone call.
At least the thing with the Dokkaebi phone call is you also have access to the cameras that are available on the enemy team. In this case, because, you know, they're not playing an Echo or a Valkyrie or anything like that, it will really have to be down to default cams, which is on the attackers to get rid of anyway, so that might not actually be a huge influence for INTZ. Either way, they've thrown the Selmas out onto the statue wall, which I think opened it up, as far as I'm aware. Once again, the clash has been brought. Now, holding on to Astro is the very thing that W7M failed to do last time they defended this site. So the fact that they've invested quite heavily in holding that space, to me says, okay, they've understood what the problem was.
Here, that Logic Bomb phone call has been set off. 2 players this time inside of Astro. Hornetau doing his usual drone work in there, but this time it isn't going to be so free for him just to waltz on through. It's going to be Gee to find the opener onto Drunks. VNX left wiggle peeking onto the door. Vitz aggressively pushing from the opposite angle. Could find himself a second here. He knows that there's a player inside of Master Bed, and that player is going to be Gee. Getting himself locked into the engagement now, but there's crossfires on every angle. Such great teamwork coming out from both of these sides. INTZ, 2 versus 4. Clash still alive inside of Astronomy. With only 20 seconds left to go. It's going to be a tough ask here, as Clash can just deny so much of this aggressive push. Duds is still out on Astronomy Repel. VNX trying to get the player behind the Clash, but this all seems a little bit futile at this point. VNX is being shot from just about every angle as he's announced himself to the world. A nice headshot for Duds. Well, nice 2 headshots, I should say, as he takes down Kurtz and Herds, but it is not going to be enough. And W7M, they're in a dangerous spot here, Gio. They are 1 round away from taking this to an overtime.
That pressure from the Astro window was a bit too little too late, and even though he got the 2 headshots, it's not enough to change the fate of the round by that point. And you could actually tell by the way that INTZ were trying to push in through the bathroom, you know, with the ace throwing in the smokes to try and conceal his location so maybe he could push on through, eaten immediately by an ADS. I mean, W7M brought a Wamai and a Jaeger, and that stuff hadn't been cleared out in Astro at all. So you're really left with very little to do at that point. Maybe if INTZ had, you know, applied way more pressure onto that part of the map sooner rather than later, things would have been different. Maybe if a player had come up through the stairs, you had more pressure over on the Wolf window through Trophy. Yes, it would have required a lot of investment in terms of your manpower, but INTZ knew that that was the part of the map that them taking advantage of won them the round last time. So why they wouldn't try to clear that out as succinctly and effectively as possible and as early in the round as possible kind of eludes me. Because you can't really ignore a clash. You also can't leave it until that late in the round to deal with.
INTZ being put to the test here tonight. W7M have come out with a strong showing after that little rehost that we had. It obviously did them some favours in terms of resetting that mentality and allowing them to just approach this 1 round at a time and not be daunted by the scoreline. They're only 1 round away from levelling things up. INTZ again with a change, going to be bringing the Monty. Now, I kind of don't want to say this, but the feeling that I get from seeing a constantly changing lineup is that you're just trying to get a round through. You're trying to convert that match point. And a Monty, it doesn't sort of strike as desperation, but it isn't far off. You're obviously going to be looking to try and get a plant down somewhere. You're kind of going for that shield versus shield scenario. But in my opinion, Clash comes out the better in that engagement pretty much every single time. I think the Lion provided more value here for INTZ.
Yeah, I think the way that you can put it is, would they have brought this attacking lineup if this were earlier on in the game, if they had a lot more of a round advantage? And I think the answer is no. We haven't seen a Monty be played by INTZ, so it does feel like that sort of last-ditch attempt to bring out something different, something new. Now, of course, it could transpire that this is INTZ's pocket strategy and they never really want to bring it out, and they don't really have to worry about showing pocket strategies given the fact that they're not going to the Copa Elite 6, so it's not like they have to save anything. I think the likelihood of that is probably quite low. And as you say, the shield versus shield matchup probably leans towards the clash, especially when we see how well it's been played by W7M so far. Not just in this game, but in the one against Phase 2. It's simply something that they're quite good at.
All quiet, all the calm before the storm, as you can sense the importance of this round in the way that INTZ are moving. They're not wanting to make an early mistake, not wanting to give away that advantage. Instead, they're going to be biding their time and gathering their intel. We see a big utility dump coming in as Vitz is going to go for a plant in a 5v5 situation. Guy pushes himself up, finds a kill. It is instantly traded. Vitz is seeing so much damage, but the plant sticks. It's 3 versus 3. Panico on the clash is still alive, and players from both sides are scrambling, trying to get themselves into favourable locations. BNX is inside bicycle storage, and he's going to be dealing with the clash head on. Hornetal comes in huge with a kill onto Kurtz, but once again, it is going to be traded. Now a 2 versus 1 as Kurtz has it all to do. Panico has been dealt with on that clash, and he's now going to aggressively take the site back. Goes for the C4 toss. It is unfortunately for him going to miss. However, his SMG doesn't. Hornetal has the vertical angle, and I'll bet he's got some information here as there isn't a lot of time left. Skeleton keys the floor, picks up that final kill. That's the importance of the vertical being shown there by INTZ, and they are going to take Villa here in what was a barn burner.
It was a messy round and something that we thought was an act of desperation from INTZ, but at this point, who cares if it was desperate or not? It worked for them. INTZ showing us what can happen in the space of one stage when you want to go from the very bottom of the leaderboard to someone who can really contend with anyone else in your region. It's a shame we don't get to see the full stats of the players because of the rehost that we had to have. So